Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first ever Nick Gabaldón Day virtual edition. I'm Jeff Williams, founder of the Black Surfers Collective, and I'm here today with two lovely guests, Rhonda Harper, the president and owner of Black Girl Surf, and Marion Clark, the president of the Surf Bus Foundation, owner of Surf Academy, and daughter of surf pioneer Mary Sutton Home. Hello, ladies. How are you, and what are you up to today?
Morning.
Hi, great to be here. Good evening from Senegal.
Good morning,
All right, everybody.
Monica.
So you both are very involved in women surfing and the outreach of future women surfers, and it's a very, very dear to my heart situation because I grew up in a household with only sisters. I only have a daughter, and we're surfers. So I just want to thank you both for reaching out to the next pioneers of women surfing, and I want to just kind of go over some key bullet points in the transition of in the transformation of women surfers today. So I know, Rhonda, that you are in Senegal currently. Can you tell us about that and what you're doing there?
So I came to Senegal in January to film with the very first female surfer, Haju Sam. And we came to film, well, not only did we come to film her, but we came to train the youth girls for the 2022 Dakar Games, which are the Olympics that are coming up for the younger kids. And so I've literally been here training and surfing and filming since January. And it's been a marvelous situation. We've started out with 5 girls and now we have close to 50. So we're talking about, we went from 1 girl in one country to now 50 girls in the same country. And we've just begun the boys side. So we've had to, we've broken into 2 different groups and 3 different teams. And this is where we are. Haju is in professional women surfing. So she goes straight from when the WSL resumes, she goes straight into what used to be the QS, and now they're doing regional qualifiers. I think that's how they're doing it. And then everybody ends up in the US Open. They're going to make that announcement on Monday. And then the girls, of course, they go into the junior section of the WSL and also the ISA games. So that's pretty much what we've been doing here, just training, working out, surfing every day. Trying to, the hardest part of this is just translation, trying to translate our rules and our system into people who grew up in the water, literally grew up surfing. And now you have to take them and show them how to go within this confine, this structure, and how you're judged as opposed to, just being out there on the waves with your friends, having a good time doing backflips off a wave. So that's basically what we're doing.
We all know that in surfing, in contests, especially on the qualifying tours and things of that nature, there is priorities. So you just can't snake somebody if it's their turn, essentially. How does that translate to the lineup out there?
So there's a thing here called Taronga, and it's strictly hospitality. It's like aloha. So they already know within their own culture that you give that next person. If you took a wave, then you give the next person. And they literally wait in line for that next person to go. It's completely different than surfing in the United States where everybody's trying to snake you. Haju had no idea what she was in for when she went to Santa Cruz. And she was literally getting cut off like every 5 minutes. So when she was there, she's like, why is it like this? And I said, this is just how we do it in the United States. And then coming here and seeing how they do it. And it literally was like, you go. Okay, you go, and it's a completely different culture. So that's how they're handling the lineup here. It's a little bit different when you have the girls versus the boys, right? The girls are not as advanced as the boys are because this is something so brand new, but even the boys are starting to help. Like they don't get mad if the girls accidentally cut them off. Like the Taronga is the love here for each other and the welcoming of you into a sport. It's completely different than the United States. It's something that I've never experienced in my 30+ years of being in the water. Never experienced in my life. It's beautiful.
Well, that's awesome. And I have to say that I've worked a lot alongside with Marion Clark, our other guest. And, we bring, literally hundreds of kids to the water each year to give them an experience with surfing. And we try to promote that aloha spirit to the best of our ability. And then then we show up at Topanga and it's anything but that. So,
Right.
Marion, would you like to expand upon the aloha-ness in the lineups?
Well, when I first started going to Hawaii, I would sit out in the water with so many people and like just what am I doing here? These waves are so different. Reef feels so different underneath you when a swell comes through than any beach break I'd ever been to. And I got really lucky everywhere that I went to surf. I would get adopted by whoever the alpha was in the water. And, like the Hawaiian uncle, I would sit there long enough that the uncle who was in charge would come over and give me a look and say, it's your turn. And no matter what, you go. It doesn't matter if you make it. What matters is that you listened and you went. And if you go, then you get given more. If you don't go, I mean, you're at the back of the line anyway, because that was your turn. But if you do go, now you're like, you put your time in, and a piece of the aloha is not just the taking of turns. It's also being teachable, and it's also putting yourself in the path of waves and ocean and earning your stripes. You're not just here to look good. You're not just here to sit and you're here to be a part of life. And in Hawaiian culture, like life, the ocean is where life happens, and land is where you go to rest. And as long as you go for it, you're always welcome. And that's a thing that I really has stuck with me as in all my journeys throughout Hawaii and like going to Latin America and going to Bali and all these places I go. Like it's hard to always discern what the rules are exactly. Is there a lineup? Who's in charge? This seems kind of disorganized. Like what's happening? And in Santa Cruz, I had to sit and watch waves in Santa Cruz for 3 months before I even got in the water. I had to be invited into the water. And once I got invited into the water, no one ever cut me off. No one ever, I mean, no matter what the day looked like, I showed up and I watched waves. And finally, the guy, like the alpha on duty, was like, you're here all the time. Come on in. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily, to tie it in with the topic of the panel, which is gender equity in surfing, I knew that I had, as a woman, I knew no matter where I go, I'm going to be noticed because I look different than other people in the lineup. And if I want to have a nice time, an easy time, a feel good time, which is why I showed up, that I have to live inside certain parameters, and I've got to be invited by like the power structure that is in place. And if I can do that and fit into that, I'll have my great time, but I also know that I can shift it.
So let's talk about the equality and why it matters so much in the lineup. I mean, both in gender and in race. I think it's a very important topic to cover. Like, I know that for the Black Surfers Collective, our logo is diversity in the lineup. But diversity extends to just beyond a black and white thing or a brown thing. It extends also to females and transgenders and everybody else that wants to find the joy in surfing. How important is it to each of you that we continue on this path of inclusion?
Well, for me, it's extremely important because my club, all of my clubs are exclusively Afro descent. And so having them be able to have the same exact time, good time in the water, is just as important as, say, somebody that wasn't of color. The reason why we do this and we hold a space for just us, so that we can have that same power that Marion was just talking about, that power structure that tells you that it's okay for you to take a wave. It's time to like break that and say, this is for everyone. This is, you know, if you have to sit on a rock and wait for somebody to invite you into a public space, then you're not going to have a good time. I mean, you're going to have a semi-good time when your time is up, but just think about the time that you're spending on that rock feeling like you're not equal to those people that are in that water. And so that's why when I go, you know, we have our Black Girl Surf, you know, I always have my shirt on, my hat on. They know exactly who I am and why I'm in these waters. It's time that somebody just crosses that border and says, look, this is a public area for everyone. I shouldn't have to, I understand localism, right? It's been going on forever, right? I understand that. But at some point, when you're starting to use violence in your localism and you're intimidating other people that are coming into a public space, then it's time to start breaking that barrier. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to do that as peacefully as possible. And I get met with aggression all the time, but I'm not here to make people comfortable. I'm here to say other people should be able to enjoy this space without being intimidated, without feeling like they're not included in something, and that we should all be able to enjoy the water equally. That's where I am. And I understand Marion's point about that power structure and how you get invited to the water. But imagine if Marion's got blonde hair, right? She has to get invited into a thing. Now, how far about down the line and how long is it going to take for someone that looks like me to get invited into that line? I'm not going to wait to get invited into a public space, right? My tax dollars are just as good as everybody else's. I'm not going to wait for that. I didn't wait to go and start training Haju in Santa Cruz at Steamers Lane. Like, that's here for everybody. I'm going to put her in the water because I know she can do what everyone else in the water can do equally and better. I mean, she went to Santa Cruz and she showed most of those guys up, and that's where most of the aggression came from. It was that she was actually better than they were. And so I'm not here to be aggressive about it, but I'm here to let you know that it's time for a change in that structure.
Marion?
I mean, I think that equality in the lineup is a reflection of what the ocean has to offer. Like, the ocean has no idea who any of us are. Doesn't know. Every wave rolls through and it's just being a wave. And regardless of your gender, how you identify, the color of your skin, how much money you make, whether you're advanced or a beginner, whether you've been to the ocean every day and you live right here, or you're brand new, you just showed up from a landlocked area and you are seeing waves for the first time. Ocean has no idea. And our lineup should reflect that quality of objectivity. I mean, it might be one of the only places in like our human sphere where we get to have that, where the laws of nature reign and not the ones that we made up. Waves got no idea. And I cling to that every time I go in the water, and I come in with all of my baggage from being a person and being a woman, having blonde hair, having, like, whatever they are. You make a great point, Rhonda. Like, I have me sitting in a spot for 3 months and being able to wait. That's a privilege. I lived close enough to be able to go every day for 3 months and sit. Like, if I lived inland, I couldn't have the time to do that. I wouldn't have the time to do that. I've got to divide and like live a life. And I think the ocean is just made more beautiful by the quality of its lineup. And a high quality lineup, to me, elders are in the water. We're in the water. Children are in the water. Babies are touching the sand. You've got it's a playground. If you really saw the sea and the shores the way that we design a playground, and when you look at a beautifully designed play space, and you've got the sandbox, and you've got the big kids playground and the younger kids, and you've got the grassy areas, and you've got families picnicking and people playing pickup games of this and that. The ocean is wide open space just like that. And I wish it got used that way. That is just the highest quality, like the nth, the zenith of what we could be. And if you don't have women as a part of that, and I feel like whether it's nature or nurture, women have that kind of mind for it more than I would say man does. And I don't know if some of that's hormonal. It's what we're born with. It just makes a space feel really balanced and harmonious. I do think that you.
Well, let me ask you this, because for many, many years, you know, the most accessible ways that people viewed surfing and the ocean was through magazines, Surfer Magazine, or, you know, Longboard, whatever the magazine was that were surfing, and it was all men cover to cover, and it was all, you know, it was just, that was just the way it is, and the way that it even is early or as late as last year, the WSL had different tiers of money pots, one for the men and one for the females. And that's basically how it's been from the invent of modern surfing and competition. Where do you think that's at now, and how do you think it needs to change, and what are the steps to give women a more level playing field in both the media and in the draw, so that our daughters can grow up and aspire to something like that?
So let me take this first with the media. I purposely did not go to surf media when Black Girl Surf came out, because I knew that everything, first of all, I didn't think they were going to cover it, and they didn't. Second of all, everything that they have covered since we've been out has had some negative undertone to it. Whether it's, you know, a women thing or a Black thing, it's always something negative. And so I decided to go to mainstream media. The very first agency to pick us up was ABC. And if you've seen us, you know, in the media now, we're like media darlings. We're on BBC. We're everywhere. And the last thing, I think somebody sent me some from ESPN. Like we're everywhere now. And then to cross over into magazines, we're in like Medium and Zora and Mary Claire, and Vogue has been you know, like I was definitely not going to do the surf media route. And the surf media now has circled back, and it's been women, right? And I tell women, if you want me to do this article, if you want me to be in your magazine, you're going to have to let me tell the truth. I can't do a fluff piece for you, because this hasn't been fluffy for me, right? The experience is wonderful. It was, you know, something I'll never forget as long as I live, and I'm glad I did it. However, this has been very difficult. And so for the little Black girl who's looking at us now and saying, oh, I want to be just like the girls at Black Girls Surf. Well, this is what we had to go through to get you here. This is who we are now, and this is why we built this. We can't just say, oh, well, we're just so graceful. Still to this day, BBC, ABC, everybody, NBC, NBC right now on LX, everybody's calling me everywhere in the world talking about, I seen you on this, and they send me the headline from a website. And still to this day, Surfer Magazine has not contacted us. Not one major surf magazine has contacted us to be even a part of an article, let alone being included in like the big frame media. So that part of it is one of the things that I always have to go over when I'm talking to people, especially when I was in the offices of the WSL. The surf media has not been as gracious to surfers of color as they have been to others. Now, I can tell you how this works out. In March, you're going to get an article about Jamaica. You're going to get one article. It's going to be Jamaica, or it's going to be Mike February. Those are the two. For the rest of the season, you're not going to see us again. It's like, you know, it's coming. And I've talked to the Jamaicans. They know it happens. I've talked to, you know, all of the people that have been watching surf media. We know we're going to get at least one good article by March. And you know, the season starts in March, ends in September. How much coverage are you going to get in between that? I know they come out every once in a while and they cover the BSC every once in a while, but I see that you guys have tried to go to mainstream media more often than you have gone to the surf media. So even
Well,
in that,
I will tell you, my experience has been somewhat similar to yours, in that I've had gotten so far as gotten commitments from surf media outlets, and then have them drop out at the last second, because everybody says that they want to be included, but like, but they all have day jobs too. So they're trying to fit me in, and I'm not trying to make excuses for them, because if I give someone my word, I stand to it and I show up. And that's why I have been successful of having these, this would be the 8th year of Nick Gabaldón Day, where we take kids out to the water. And thank you, Marion, for being a part of every single one of them. And it's going to continue. And there's been years where I've self-funded, just because that's the way that if that's how it has to go down, it will go down. So I agree that sometimes in the media outlets that are surf related, we don't get a lot of love, even to this day, even though they say they want to grow a more diverse outlook. At what point does it really ring true? So I would commend you for your honesty, and I will let you know that I too have had very similar circumstances. Marion, would you like to touch on that before we get into the last bit of our conversation today?
The original question was media representation, like
yeah, and it was a media and like how people have always said that men are more interesting to watch, and then so how is it now that because my favorite surfer is like Carissa, like I just love her, so.
And so many people will say she surfs like a man, that she surfs like a
yeah, they just say that. Yeah.
I mean, she's a beast. She surfs like herself. That's
I love her.
Yeah, same. Well, growing up, there was always some surfing in my field. And I would say that exposure is really important. And as you grow up in it, you get to a place where you start to realize that you don't see yourself represented anywhere. And then you begin to wonder, especially as you move into that phase of life around teenagehood, where you are looking more to TV shows, magazines, print media, now social media, for like, what's the path going to be for me? You don't really know to forage your own. And so you're looking for avenues. And when you don't see yourself, you wonder, like, is that my path? I would say there's always personalities that are like, this is what I want, and I'm going this way. I don't care if I'm blazing my own trail. But mostly I would say if you don't see yourself, you do lose a little bit of fire and enthusiasm for what you're doing. And I coach a lot of kids for the local public schools here in Santa Monica, and had to fight a few years ago for getting equal representation in local low-level surf contests, developmental surf contests for girls. And I was told that our teams, which are half female, that we have a girl problem. That other areas, there are not this many girls, and we're not going to create space for girls because it's a high, it's a low, girls are kind of interested, and then they change their minds. And my answer has always been, girls are smart. They're going to look at what's available for them. And if it's not already there, they're going to find something else to do. They aren't going to waste their time. They're only going to get so far. If they've got enough self-esteem, they know how quickly they're going to reach whatever you've laid out for them, and they're out. They're going somewhere else. And we do need to see ourselves, to know what's possible, and then to alter what's possible. Surfing, like, we're just making it up. Every unique thing you see in a wave, somebody is. And I wish that you would see more like equality in the level of surfing that men and women gave if there was more imagery of women that wasn't mostly a real girl's butt in a magazine or
Correct.
a couple fake, like actors pretending to be surfers. And the answer to some of this, you just have to throw it out there. Media people who say, well, that's not going to sell. You know what? Athleticism sells. It sells to the audience that you want to buy it. Girls don't want to see butts in magazines. They want to see their potential mentors doing rad stuff.
And I would also say that realism sells for sure. Like, I want to keep it real, and I believe you do better. So I want to ask you one final question. I want to touch on another subject, and that is, like, surfing is such a young sport. What advances for women do you see in the sport from where we are today? Like, how do we continue to progress? What does that look like?
I think both Marion and I agree on this. Like, we keep our programs going year round. Like, my program is year round. So I'm constantly recruiting girls. I'm constantly in the media. I'm trying to do outreach as much as possible, because the only way you're going to get to these girls, the only way you're going to change things is if you have, this army. I keep saying we have an army of these girls, and it's not, we started out with literally Marion was there the day we started out. We had one little board meeting down there, and now we have San Francisco Bay Area camp. We have Los Angeles. We just signed on Sharon Schaefer, the first African American pro surfer who's coaching down in Los Angeles now. She just came on within the last couple of days. We have Jamaica, we have Senegal, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire. So unless you're out there and you're hustling these places and you're actually putting boots on the ground, don't just talk about it, put boots on the ground. I see Marion, she's pregnant at all, and she was still out there just coaching and surfing. It's just like, go girl. Just really hanging out and everything. But until people keep doing this kind of thing, this is what's going to, we're going to continue to be, held down. And at this point, Black Girl Surf can't be held down. Black Girl Surf is going to continue on for generations, I hope, even after I'm gone. I said I was only going to do this a year, and we started this in 2014. Now here we are in 2020, and Sharon Schaefer is now one of the coaches. We never thought this was going to be able to happen, but here we are in this movement, and it's going forward no matter what we do. And I'm sure Marion feels the same way. She's not going to stop. That was a cute little baby right there. I'm sure that's going to be the next NSA champion one of these days.
Right after this one.
Yeah, right after that one. See, you got to have that one too.
So 5 years ago, I do a summer event for girls only, and it's advanced girls. It's 1 week. We call it the immersion excursion. And every single day is like a big surf bonanza of a different surf spot. And we do a deep dive into surf industry and culture. And on this one particular day, we surfed in northern LA. I think I took everybody to County Line, and then we mobbed back to Santa Monica, and we went to the WSL. And I had these girls write out questions they were going to get to meet the women's commissioner, Jessie Miley Dwyer. And I bring them in there, they get the tour, we do some pull-ups in the little weight room at the WSL, and then they meet Jessie. And their questions were things like, why are there 17 women on the pro tour and 36 men? How come there aren't as many events for the women as for the men? How come in our own surf contests, we surf in this series, and there's only 2 spots for us and there's 9 spots for boys? Why? And Jessie's answer was, well, I think you should ask the director of that contest why, and ask for more representation, and make yourselves known. You have the power. And then she turns to my employee, who also his second job was at the WSL editing video, and she goes, I'm turning them into my soldiers. And I was going like, yes, yes. do this. And that's what the girls did. They wrote a letter asking the director of this contest, how come, and like, what can we do to get more spots? And the answer that came back was, well, girls are too volatile. Some years you want to do it and some years you don't. And boys are more of a sure thing. Boys always want to compete. Girls don't. That's why. And my mom, Mary Setterholm, who's one of the co-founders of WISA, the Women's International Surf Association, wrote a letter. Like it turned into a big thing. It turned into a really big thing. And like, how dare you ask this question kind of big thing. And how dare you make waves big thing. And the sad piece was that the director of this contest series, the two people in charge were women. And my mom's letter, and it's a beautifully written letter, was how sad that 45 years later, things look the same. How sad that 45 years ago, we were being pushed by the men who were competing to, why don't you just let us do a token heat? We'll do one heat for girls in the middle of our contest, and we'll turn it into this big kind of media frenzy, like, ooh, look, the girls, or how about we do a half guy, half girl heat, kind of like, we'll do a face-off. Who are the better surfers, the men or the women? And my mom was like, I really expect better. It's 45 years later, like, you've got some 8th girls who are standing up and asking solid questions. How come you're trying to squash them? This is the next generation. We're not always going to be here. We're living legends. And our time has come, and they are ready to step in. And this is how you're welcoming them into this activism fray. And my mom's a great writer. She wrote it really well. I'm happy to give you the letter. Beautiful. And she wrote a beautiful article in a 1974 version of Surfer Magazine, asking the same question, like, why are we holding men and women to the same standards when we're not the same? We don't surf the same way. We don't approach waves the same way. We were not given the same physical abilities. Testosterone gives you so much percentage more muscle than estrogen does. Why are we asking women to do the same things in the same frame of time as men? That doesn't mean we don't deserve the same amount of exposure or more. Like, we do it differently, and that should be honored and championed. Which I want to say, like, to Rhonda's point, like, damn right. Yeah. And when you give women the space, like, we grow fast. And when you give women the space, we bring everybody with us. Like Rhonda said at the very beginning, started with girls, and here come all the boys.
The boys will follow.
The boys are actually jealous now that the girls are all getting all attention. Like, when the cameras come, they just want to go to the girls. The boys are like, what about us? So we're like, well.
Women only. And, the boys wanted to come in. The boys, the brothers, the husbands, the boyfriends all came in. And, I'll tell you, as a business owner, my girls run it. How the mood of the girls is a real reflection of how the whole year is going to go. And while the boys may be very excited, and I champion everybody's involvement, and when the frame of mind of the girls is healthy, everything moves smoothly and goes well.
That's a
fact. It's an observation made 20 years.
That's
I don't
fact.
Suggest
so
why.
Jacqueline, let me ask you, what do you think do you think it's unfair that women sometimes get less prize money for surf competitions than boys do?
Yeah, everyone should be equal parts.
Out of the mouth of babes.
Out of the mouth of babes. That is so true. And then, and not only that, I mean, if you really look at the way that they structured it, it really still was unfair, because even though they had the gender equality, they were on the newspaper and they did all of this, that was for the Big Wave Tour and for the CT. If you were still on the QS, which you have to spend way more money being on the QS circuit than you have to on the CT, you're probably sponsored at the CT level. At the
Totally.
QS level, you have to like hustle his town, this town. We're sending, 1 week, Haji's supposed to be in Costa Rica, next week she's supposed to be in Spain. She's from West Africa. How could she afford that? And then you go to the contest. I sent her to this contest here in Senegal last year, Senegal Pro, right after the big announcement of equality, right? The WSL made this big old thing. She gets to Senegal Pro, and the men are making 20,000 and the girls are making 10. And I pulled her from the contest on purpose. I would not let her do it. If you're going to be equal, and you can see it on my page too, on my IG, if you're going to be equal across the board. So that means that if you're going to be equal in the CT and the Big Wave Tour, then you should be having equal pay in the QS Tour, because you have to hustle way more, 10 times more, to get those points than you have to when you're on the CT Tour. That you normally is pretty much paid. You're pretty much well sponsored at that point. When you're not sponsored and you have to pay $3,000 to get to Spain, right? And then you got to pay for food, lodging, all of that. Your check is 10. This guy's is 20. How much did you actually make at that contest? Now you got to go from Spain to Huntington Beach for the U.S. Open, or whatever the next route is on the tour. So you're spending way more money on the QS than you are on the CT, even though they're much, I love Fiji, I love Tahiti, I love all their destinations, I love, but you have to hustle way more. And and coming from Africa, on the continent of Africa, and I discussed this with the WSL, is how can somebody from West Africa, how can a girl from West Africa get enough points to get into the CT when every contest last year, except for 2, were canceled on the African continent? That was true. Like every single one of them was canceled to be announced, and they just never came through. So I want to be a pro surfer. This is Haju. This is our life. I want to be a pro surfer. And all of the contests, but 2 on your continent, have been canceled. Now you got to go all the way to the United States. Somebody has to sponsor you to come and pay for every single thing that you do in the United States for you to be able to do the 2 or 3 contests that we have that are available in the United States. Everything else is, it's a world tour. So everything else is a flight, paperwork, immigration, all this costs, paying for it. And if you don't have a sponsor, how's it getting paid for? You literally, it's just uneven all over. So if you're going to do the pay, don't just have the Big Wave Tour. Don't just have the CT, but put the QS in there and make sure the QS is getting 20 when the boys are getting 20. I want 20 just like they do.
And make sure that if you're in a high enough level to compete contest to contest, that you can afford to travel contest to contest.
Right. It's all about the sponsorship. But then even in the sponsorship, you're talking about inequity too, because you have to have a certain look in order to get sponsored, right? You're pretty much product placement. Okay, well, does this girl look like she should be holding this particular wax? Well, if you don't fit the narrative from some men back in the marketing department or the creative director or whatever they're calling it this year, you're not going to get sponsored. So it's even harder for them. So we're doing constant GoFundMes, right? We're doing constant GoFundMes just to get her from here to here. Right? How long is that going to last, right? We've been doing this now for 3 years. Yeah, we've been doing it now with her for 3 years, right? And then that time you've gotten, what, 12,000 in donations. Okay, how many contests can you actually do in the world on that budget, right? So economically, it's not even feasible. And I think that's why they went to regional. Even it costs just as much for me to travel from here to South Africa as it does to travel from here to the United States, right? So even if you're on the continent, you're still spending a lot of money to travel. So and you can't get an airline to sponsor. I've never seen an airline say, "Hey, we're going to sponsor, we're going to sponsor surfers." I've just never seen that happen. I wish like Brussels or somebody would come out and be like, "Okay, we're going to sponsor all the athletes," or put board charges down, and you got to worry about board charges, and then your equipment getting there on time and in one piece.
In one piece.
To tackle the
Because
angle
we've all
of
had
getting.
boards show up not in one piece. Well, this is why women in surfing is so important to me, and why I felt this panel just is a perfect, piece to go alongside with this year's Nick Gabaldón Day. And I want to thank you both for taking the time to speak with us. And I really appreciate what you both do for the sport, what you do for the advancement of humankind, and what you do for the advancement of my personal growth and the growth of my family. Thank you so much. I hope you both have a lovely, wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.